listening to the Leadership Woman podcast with me, Jill Saville. And today on the podcast, I have a very good friend of mine, I nearly said an old friend of mine, who is sitting in the UK. I've not seen him for ages, so it's just lovely to sit and see him. He was just telling me about having his haircut in the garden. So it's Mike Jeacock. Mike and I, we met when we were at the Legal Aid Board. So maybe, Mike, you can introduce yourself for everybody.
My God, the Legal Aid Board, that's a long time ago. It soon became the Legal Services Commission, didn't it? So before that, I was kind of working in financial services. I was effectively doing the retail transformation programme for the Royal Bank of Scotland as it went through its massive transformation, and the famous Project Columbus and McKinsey's. I was part of that team, which was quite exciting. So I guess without realising, that was my first real introduction to transformation, change or of that sort. I'd worked in various departments in Royal Bank. The most one I think I took most away for was 8 years in HR department, which interestingly they sent me as a form of punishment because I refused under the management training program to stay any longer doing corporate blending on the basis that, you know, I think I would have died there if it had gone on much longer. People were promoted by moving one desk to the right, and that was kind of their ambition. So I guess I knew I wasn't put out for corporate banking. So they sent me to HR. Best thing I ever did. Started to learn about people, and I dare say as we go through this next 20-30 minutes, people will be high on the list of things. And then I decided I wanted to go into the public sector quite wide. I think I must have taken a bang to the head at that particular time, or somebody was very convincing. One of the consultants, I think it was Odgers, I think, with hindsight, convinced me that I should go and work with one of my favourite leaders, I think one of yours, Steve Orchard, and I only worked for him for 16 months, but what an experience, you know. The guy was legal aid through and through. He recognised the need was for change. He recognised that some of the skills that hopefully I brought, not least a bit of personality and things like that, you know, it was okay to be a leader that cared. So he gave us a bit of head, really. And I think that's where you and I bumped into each other, where we were kind of wrestling with these challenges. And of course, then Tony Blair's government came along with access to justice, which in some ways, and I didn't recognise it, was catapulted us into more change, a positive thing, I think, in that sense. But it was really interesting.
Let me just go back to Steve Orchard then, because leadership is our thing. And my recollection of him was that you felt so safe. I can remember we were going through a huge change with the criminal contract or something like that, and nobody liked us. And being in his office one day, and I was quite stressed about it. And he said, "Look, I am going to go off and play golf back to, I can't remember where he came from, but it was out of London.
Dorset.
I'm going to spend the weekend, I'm going to play golf. I'm not going to think about it," he says, "so don't you." And it gave you that permission to switch off.
Yeah. Well, what reminds me of Steve is I used to go in, he'd have a brew, a pot of tea and a cup of tea. His feet would be up on the desk. I think in those days you might have been allowed to have a fag in the office, or maybe not. And some of the biggest decisions we ever made was he prone sitting with his feet on the desk saying, "Yeah, we're going to do that, Mike," or "You're going to do that. What support do you need from me?" Which at that level of seniority was unusual at the time. It's unusual now, but he didn't know it and I didn't know it. He was an enabling leader. He knocked down the barriers for you. He used to take me to see the Lord Chancellor, and the way he dealt with the Lord Chancellor was like spectacular. I mean, it was didn't change, you know, just said, "Here's the rules of the game, this is what we should be doing." So that was what it was all about.
That's true. When he was called in front of select committees, I mean, you would think he was just going out for lunch.
Yeah.
This calmness, this safety, And I think the legal aid board, whilst under him, we really thrived.
I was sorry I didn't work with him longer, if I'm being honest, because it was such a great opportunity, and I could sense I was learning as I was going on. And of course, you only had to nip next door and get your finance sorted out with Brighton. I mean, it was just, they were.
That's true. I'd forgotten him. Yes.
Yeah, they were quite a double act, the pair of them. You know, so that was always a healthy relationship as well, because Brian offered challenge as well. So he was steeped in legal aid as well, which was always helpful. So you have plenty of experts, and then you have the up and coming people like Richard Collins, who kind of, you know, was making his way. But what struck me about the public sector, it was my first experience, just how good the staff are, and they get bad press. You know, I never give the public sector bad press, but the leadership was different. I found the first 3 months, and Steve said, "What's the biggest thing?" I said, "The difficulty in getting decisions." Not necessarily, but, you know, in government and things, it slowed everything down. That was my learning curve for the first 3 to 6 months, I'd have to say.
Let me go on to Richard Collins, because I worked with him for quite a while. And he also was somebody who enabled me to go off and do my own thing. But you talk about coming from the private sector, and I can remember we all knew you'd come from the private sector, but you never made us feel second best.
I think my challenges were, and I guess the bank had started to move away from some out of financial services some 5 years earlier, in that they celebrated technical experts, but they didn't necessarily make them people managers, understanding that often that was a mismatch, that if you wanted your best technical people, I found when I went into the public sector, lots of very technical people who weren't as comfortable managing people as they probably should have been. And that impacts on staff when you've got leaders who haven't got those emotionally intelligent skills. They did care, but they cared in terms of the technical stuff. If you gave them a policy document or to go and do a one-to-one, I know what they'd be doing. They'd be doing technical document. One of the lessons I learned early on was to say, "How many one-to-ones have you cancelled this week?" You know, and they used to look at me. I say, "Well, 5. Oh, right. Okay. Why was that?" "Well, I'm too busy." I said, "Well, you should be too busy doing the one-to-ones, because that's where you'll get the most benefit." And it didn't make me hugely popular with some people, but you know, I long since passed caring about that. I wasn't rude with people. I just said, activity management was always big on my list of things. You know, what are you doing all day that will help you deliver the outcomes? And what do you think is important? And what do your staff think is important? And we started to do some, remember us doing 360s? My God, it was like revolution had happened, you know.
It was. You mentioned HR, and it's only more recently that I have really understood how far advanced our HR department was. Because there are many companies still only introducing what I thought were the norm in the 90s.
Well, one of the big takeaways for me from the days at Legal Aid was that you had to have your HR department as a business partner, not somebody there to do just people. And actually, as soon as they understood that, they started to develop things around what the business required. And George Lapine, who was in charge, was ahead of his time. And Lorraine Jones, was it Lorraine Jones on it, I think? Or was she SRA? Well, I can't remember. They all blend in. But they were quite progressive in it. They were quite progressive in that. And, you know, I'd just come back from 6 years at Jersey, much of the success is about how HR have adapted themselves as business partners. But I also did that for facilities. I did that for comms. I did that for anybody that had engagement, finance. Instead of leaving them in their silos, you have to include them in the change program. If they're not going through the change and transformation, how are they expected to feel the same things as the people who are working perhaps at the coalface? And it's really interesting. And I see loads of organizations toiling with this because they don't focus on outcomes. They still handing out KPIs and documents and hugely beautiful glossy documents on work, equality and diversity. Equality and diversity is in the DNA of an organization. It's not a policy that's handed out or look at us, we've now got, a policy document that's well read. Well, it's not. It's actually the action. When you go into business, it's the people at the end of it. You probably realize I feel quite passionate about this by this stage.
Yeah, I can tell. And as I said, I had no clue what we were going to talk about. I talked about you the other day in a group of mine,
right.
because today I'm quite involved in mindset and the fact that we can choose our attitude. But once upon a time, I certainly wasn't, and I let my emotions go away with me. And I can remember you stood next to my desk, and you'd be saying, "How are you, Jill?" And I'd say, "Yeah, I'm fine. Well, I'm not good, but how are you?" And you'd say, "Well, I'm happy." And I'd say, "How can you be happy? You know, everything's turned into whatever." And you'd say, "Because I got up this morning and decided to be."
Yeah. And I still do that every day now. I mean, you might want something new, and there are 2 or 3 other things I've been able to attract that I do exactly the same things every day. I spend 15 minutes every day just speaking to people, usually on the phone, and simply saying thank you. It's worth, you can't put a monetary value on it, because the whole mantra for me now, and you know what I'm going to say, I think, is that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And I do that every day. How can you show people that you care about them? And that's when good times, bad times, when they need your help, not always giving them solutions, although sometimes that's what you need to do, but actually, just showing that you care. And I was talking to a group the other day, and we were saying that back in the days, and this was in the banking days before I went to legal aid, there was a big drive in the old bank on visible leadership. And I always tell, and it's a true story, that obviously they'd been to one of their meetings, probably at a golf club of those days, and probably had a round of golf. And somebody had told them that they needed to play more visible leadership. And I had a manager who, we didn't know anything about. He used to come, he used to sit in his office, tea would be wheeled in, and various customers. But every Tuesday between 2 and 15 after he was told, he would come out the office, walk around the office, never say anything to anybody, and go back in his office. So me being the cheeky chappy that I said to his secretary, we all know it's between 2 and 15 on each Tuesday afternoon, because Mr. had walked around. And she said, "Yeah, he's got a diary card that comes out that says," and I said, "Are you serious?" And she said, "Yeah, that's his response to visible leadership." So you can see the changes and how attitudes have changed. And I always thought with you, your attitude was contagious. And that's kind of a good thing, if you can be, positive and stuff, then people will respond. And if you need to put your arm around somebody, you need to put your arm around somebody. And you need to be able to give them difficult messages. But, it goes back to one of my first ever best managers in the bank who said to me, "Treat people as you'd like to be treated yourself, and you won't go far wrong, mate." And it's true. So, yeah, lots of little things. But I do say thank you. Try it. If anybody's listening, try it every day, 15 minutes. You'll probably get through 5 or 10, 25 a week, 100 a month, 1,200 a year, just by saying thank you, and just see the impact it has. Honestly, you'll have no difficulty finding reasons to say thank you to somebody.
No. And thinking about COVID then, thinking about everybody suddenly moving into this remote working space, what you just suggested may well be something to adopt, would you say?
Yeah, I mean, COVID has been really interesting, because in the first 4 months, I sat back and sort of smiled to myself, because I'm saying this is about IT and the enabler. And I've done remote management, as you have. It is by far the most difficult thing ever to do. And one of the guys who rings me up when he's having a panic attack or a crisis just said, "We're not connecting with the staff." So I said, "Well, have you trained your managers in how to deal with remote management? And what information are you providing?" And he went, "No." So I said, "Well, why don't you start that off by picking up the phone and phoning somebody that's on the lines working with them, say, how is it going? And you don't need to do anything for 2 days, because it'll go around like Wi-Fi. It'll be better than any email. But actually sit and talk to people. What are the difficulties? What would you like us to do better?" And the number of businesses that just didn't go and look at remote management, and where you've got a very proactive HR department, and we have got them, they're out there, they recognize that. And as soon as it was getting the IT in place, it was about how do we support you managers, and in terms of well-being, an organization that's got a real agenda to well-being would have sorted that out. And you know, because that's what it's about, really.
That's true. I think there are companies that already were very good at building trust and engagement, coped well in the remote sector. The companies that just wanted to see bums on seats and monitoring people put in the surveillance technology on the on the IT.
Well, I think it's the difference between an efficient process and an effective process. You know, getting the IT working is efficient. Being effective is about the people and dealing with, you know, the issues that it throws up. And you're gonna, organisations are gonna have a real challenge getting people back into that space where going back to the office. And there'll be people, you'll get a blend. Any organisation that's worth its salt will blend this and say, you know, because I still see too many people being recruited and then not trusted. And I say to people, why would you do that? You know, if you've got command and control, and you know I hate command and control management, and then you recruit the high-level people, you bring them in, and then you tell them what to do, and they don't like it, then why would you do that? Why would you think that that's okay? These people want to come and make a difference, and very often what I call will-do people, not can-do people. I mean, you want will-do people on your team if you're going to make a difference. Can-do is a given. If you're recruiting anybody and they can't do the job, then you've got a problem. When you've got will-do people, or most of your staff are will-do, you'll see a massive difference in an organisation, because they'll pick up and run with it. And that's where enabling leadership is so easy. And it really is that easy. I know people will probably say, well, it's not that. It is that easy.
I suppose it is that easy. Personality comes in here too.
Sure it does.
Because your personality is such that you find it easy to make small talk. You find it easy to go around and find a topic that somebody's interested in. And I watched you do it a lot. But for some people, it isn't so easy, as we mentioned earlier.
But why? So can I just challenge you back? And I will offer you a challenge. So why are they putting a leadership post if you're not sure that those are the skills that you're going to require? So you know, I watch Coronation Street every week. I know Made in Chelsea characters. You know why? Because I like watching them, and staff like me talking about them. You know, I know what's going on in the Housewives of Cheshire, mainly because one of them lives next door to me. So,
oh my goodness.
So I do kind of chat to people, and you know, and I love Manchester United. You can always get people involved in talking about things, you know, and anything topical. I mean, it's not difficult. It really isn't difficult. And, you know, and I would argue very strongly, as you're probably gathering, that you need to get the outcomes that you want from an organisation.
But the thing is, Mike, that not everybody goes above and beyond. Not everybody goes further than they need to. And I'm going to, I might be embarrassing you, but I remember I'd not seen you for years, many years. And somebody in my new French family wanted to treat his brother for his 21st, and it was Madame Man United. And I just thought, you know what, Mike Jeacock used to love Man United. I wonder if there's any way to get tickets. So I contacted you, and not only did you give them your season ticket or whatever, because you had them, somebody met them and took them to the ground. And I have to say, my credibility in the French family here is just went up. They now think that I can solve anything.
But I would play that back to you, is that, you know, I go back to what I said before. I care about our relationship. So, and you know, so if I can make that relationship better by doing you something you've asked me to do, and it wasn't a difficult ask, then I would say to you, why wouldn't I do that? And you know, too many leaders don't even make the contact with people to know what they care about. I mean, legal aid was a good example. I remember there was an individual, and I won't name the person for fear of being sued, and everybody says, oh, that's just X. She's always like that. Or he's always like that. There were two of them, but he's always like that. And I said, well, that's not acceptable, you know. Well, what can we do? I said, well, who's the manager? So I sat down and we had a very interesting chat. And, you know, and I said, you've got to challenge this, because actually they're determining the outputs and the outcomes for an organisation. And actually, if you're doing proper management of performance, there is a difference between management of performance and performance management. then you should be kind of doing that. And I said to the manager, when was the last time you had a one-to-one? Oh, they don't like them. I said, and? And? But, you know, you can spot things, you know, and I learned very early on that, you know, good managers spot things. I mean, when I got my first assistant manager's job in the bank, I was going to change the world, me. And I used to work from 7 o'clock in the morning till 9 o'clock, and all my staff were going home at 5 o'clock. My manager came in one day and he brought me a house brick, and he put it on my desk. He said, there you go. I said, what do you mean? He said, every time somebody brings you a problem, you pick it up and you put it in your haversack and you wonder why you're going home knackered. Your wife's probably complaining that you're never going home. You think that by you doing it, the team looks good. It doesn't. So pass the brick back. Every time you hear something, don't do it. And it was a magical lesson for me, because all of a sudden I thought, well, and performance management was it, because I would have got performance managed. And I thought, if I do it and I cover for the team, then I'll be all right. And of course I wasn't. So no, I did learn.
No. And I've heard that in a different way. Don't take the monkey. I can't remember who read that, but yeah, somebody comes with a problem, it's a monkey on the shoulder, and if you're not careful, you've got it on yours.
But you can imagine me in a posh office with a brick on my desk, can't you? Thinking, you know, is this something? Is there a subliminal message from it? Well, actually, there probably was, if I'm being honest. But it's things like that, and you don't recall them then as, you know, good emotional intelligence, because it wasn't the hot topic. But no. These were good people leaders.
And the other thing, not only were you talking about mindset many decades ago, which I'm now into, you were also quoting John Maxwell with that, as you just have. Were you reading his books at the time, or did you just see this quote?
Yeah, I made a decision in 1990, because it was 1990, kind of, you know, over the next 5 years, I wanted to improve something. So rather than play at the edges, I thought, what am I going to do? And emotional intelligence was just starting to kind of get some credence. So I had to read all those things, you know, Good Habits, Covey and people like that. I used to go to webinars, and my bosses used to go, why do you want to go to that? But actually, I'm trying to learn. And the bank had just kind of gone into using profiling for things. And I found that fascinating, certainly emotional intelligence. The best one is when I was sent and we did animals. There was a variety of things. It was used to be animals or some other things. And I filled in the questionnaire, and I was with one of my best friends in the bank. And we were actually in Scotland. And we filled it in, and we said, right, we'll come back after lunch and we'll give you the answers. So when we got back in, they were visibly excited. The people on the stage were visibly excited. And they said, we needed to we were so keen to speak to you. We've been doing this for like 3 years, and we've never had a panda in the audience. And my mate went, that'll be you. And I went, ah. And of course, what was the next phrase? It was Mike Jeacock. Who is he? And he's a panda because they were very rare then. And they used to say there was a high and a low. And I hadn't gone right between the two. I hadn't gone high or low. I've been like, so we've never seen anything like it. So I said, what happened next? So I was psychoanalyzed for about 3 weeks afterwards. So just beware if you're filling in these profile forms. But I used to find that stuff fascinating. Try in your own ways to put them into practice. Yeah. I do like people.
I know you like people. You don't have to persuade people.
No, but you know, sometimes you work with some managers and you think you don't like people, do you? You know, in that sense. And sometimes it's as basic as that. And boards have got a lot to answer for, Jill. I think some boards are fantastic, and they engage and they don't stand aloof. They work to serve the organisations, not as servants, you know. But I've seen completely the opposite, and you know, it's dysfunctional. So, but that's another web podcast for us to do.
Well, I was just sat here thinking, no, I'm not going to comment.
Don't go there. No, but it is a hot topic. And I find it fascinating because I do kind of ask some, as you know, cheeky questions on occasions. And I think I sent you one. I've been talking to CEOs who are trying to do diversity inclusion and failing miserably on many occasions. So they said, Mike, what would you ask me? So I said, well, if I was recruiting you, I'd say to you, if the organisation was a reflection of your behaviours towards equality and diversity, what would the organisation look like? And you want to hear the silence, the kind of, I don't know. I said, don't you think that's kind of a bit of a statement? Because people do look up to you as the lead. It's a role model stuff. And you get some inspirational stuff. You get some absolutely inspirational stuff. And I said, I can't add to that, just go and do it. And, you know, but that's about engagement, because they still want to box equality and diversity off as women, men, black, white. It's not. It's much bigger than that. It's much bigger. One of the best kept secrets in Jersey, which I still want to keep kept, was we were recruiting return to work parents, both male and females. What a fantastic group of people. And, you know, we used to they say, what hours do you want to do? You know, and they say, well, I can do 20. Great, we'll take 20 hours off, because you need to get 25, 26 hours off them. What do I need to be in the office? No. And you just got this cadre of people who would eventually come back to the organisation if they chose. But they knew about the environment, and, you know, it's things like that that for me is equality and diversity.
And so you're talking there about flexibility of working, which I never realised, being in the civil service, how lucky I was, because I'd done full-time, part-time, 3 days, 2 days, and it wasn't seen as anything negative. Well, yes, it was seen as something that women did, and we were eternally grateful. But other than that, it was accepted, even at senior levels. If they wanted to keep you, then they would allow you to do 2 days a week or whatever, just to keep you. And yet, I don't see that still. When people are talking about part-time, and I'm saying, if you remember, whenever we were inventing a job, or not inventing a job, but there was a new role, some new work.
Drawing up a role description was the phrase that we used.
Oh, sorry. And you look at it and you think, all of these jobs aren't 37 or 40. They're not. Yeah. You know, actually, we only want somebody for 20 hours a week, but you're giving it a full role. And I don't think enough thought was...
two things. One, I couldn't agree more with you. And I think it's more prevalent now than it ever was then. But you made an interesting comment, and you said allowed to. You know, that's not a negotiation with the person. You know, if somebody can do 20 hours and that's 4 hours a day, 5 days a week, 2 days, 10 hours, whatever you want to make it up, then that's the flexibility. And if you want to change it to a Tuesday to a Thursday, you shouldn't seek permission to do that. And you come back to your early point. You have to trust these people simply because they're part-time, contract. You need to trust them. I mean, it never ceases to amaze me that organisations spend millions bringing in IT contractors and they don't trust them. They don't tell them what they really want. And I mean, I just kind of shake my head. But it's just mismanagement of stuff. And so I would never think allow would be and I'm not trying to pull you up, but flexibility works both ways. You know, if you needed them in a crisis, these people were there by your side. You know, often before you even ask them, they would be will-do people in my world. That would be a good example of a will-do person.
There was a certain amount of allow, though, because you did have to apply for it. And one thing that I think this COVID has done is that suddenly most people were at home, not just the women. And I don't want to go back to what was normal. I'm hoping that people who actually work really well at home can continue to work well at home, and the ones that want to go in the office can go in the office, and it will no longer be along gender lines, which it tended to be.
I agree, and I think, you know, if ever we've got an opportunity to think accepting, promoting command and control management, this is the moment not to do it. And let's have enabling leaders who recognise different people need different answers to things, different alternatives. But you need to be authentic with people, because that's how you build trust. If all of a sudden said everybody backed up the office, and it will happen, I'm telling you now, it will happen, then people will vote with their feet. They will, because they've suddenly discovered that they don't have to spend 2 hours on a train if you're down south with 300 other people in a 200 people space. And that will change. And I think if you can find the right leaders and find the right processes, and I'm boring again, focus on outcomes. What do you want as an outcome for this? Then you've got a head start. I'm not a big fan of the word new ways of working or the new normal, because I don't think they knew what the old normal was, never mind the new normal.
I think you commented on Simon Sinek video that I posted the other day.
Yeah.
It's only 5 minutes. He's somebody that I really rate. He seems to make everything simple.
Yeah.
He talks so much sense.
And common sense. He speaks common sense.
Yes, common sense, which we're back to. But he said, why on earth do we call them soft skills? And of course, as somebody who works in the soft skills area, I totally agree.
It's the hardest thing I've ever learned. I could never understand why people call them soft skills. If they're that soft, why do so many people find them hard to do? That's all I think I said to you.
The thing is, though, that we like hard skills because they're measurable. And they're more quantifiable. Whereas these soft skills, and going back to what I was talking about was the HR department, not only did they give us some kind of framework, I remember, they were talking about behaviours, and we had a set of sentences and things that gave us examples of what these behaviours looked like, and certainly what these behaviours didn't look like. And at the time, I didn't appreciate just how good that was.
Well, so, don't you remember the gas to breath when we said that 50% of your reward is now based upon your behaviours and 50% on what you would call the hard tasks? You know, people will mark each facet. Mike, what does that mean? So I said, it means you're going to have to do some people stuff and get the right behaviours. Don't you think I've got them already? Well, no, not really, no. And, you know, we're trying to give you the opportunity. Sometimes you just have to leave the organisation. One of the biggest terrorists, and I'll use the word carefully in this sentence, came to me after 6 months and said, I didn't appreciate what you said about being people, but can I just say I've never enjoyed a job war. And you know kind of you're going to win then, don't you really? And I said, well, what made the transition? Because I could see the impact it was having on other people. And I also started to understand the impact of me being as I was having on people. And it was never going to be acceptable. And, you know, those are wins for you.
So human skills are really important. They're very hard to quantify and measure. Do you have any tips for how would you develop human skills?
Well, I think you've got to be comfortable with feedback. Somebody once said to me, and I didn't appreciate it again at the time, that feedback is the breakfast of champions. And I used to think, bloody hell, what does that mean? And kind of, I was in a bit of a turmoil for probably a couple of hours. And then I started to, you know, he's right. I'm a big fan of 360. I'm a big fan of feedback. I'm a big fan of doing observation coaching. I will sit in with my people that I manage and watch them do one-to-ones, not to pick holes in them, because, you know, just to help them improve if they're really struggling. Well, you know, agenda setting. It's not about you speaking for 59 minutes of the hour and them doing 1 minute, you know, stuff like that. I guess role modeling and kind of showing people the softer skills can be achieved. 360 is very powerful. If it's used as a blunt instrument, then don't do it. That's my only caveat, because if it's just seen as a chance to vent, and you've held a grudge against somebody for 20 years and this is your chance to vent it, then don't do it. But you've got enough people clever enough to know what the right kind of commentaries that are coming through, and start to look at that as stuff. And staff surveys, I like staff surveys, but not kind of happy sheets, you know, in terms of. And then when you've got the feedback, bring the people with you. Get, you know, at Jersey, some of our best ideas come from, not to decry their jobs, but the receptionists, the post people. They were brilliant because they knew all the bloody things that were wrong, really. And, you know, you should always take those commentaries on board. So
involve people, feedback.
Communicate with people.
Difficult conversations as well.
Yeah, and there are lots of really good training courses on that. Spotting mental health issues is a big thing. You need to be very aware of the pressures that people are working under, either personally, professionally, or a combination of the two. And just growing some of that sensitivity and, you know, looking for the signs. And
One question I have then is, what's the thing that makes you most proud? Or a couple of things, a couple of moments.
Wow, that's a biggie question. it'll sound very simplistic, but for me, it was really important. So at the Solicitors Regulation Authority, where I was the Chief Operating Officer, and I was there for 7 years, they had an annual award for the staff performer, which the staff all voted for. And an executive had never even made the top 20. Yeah. And one year I won it, and I was kind of gobsmacked, you know. And the chief executive said, I don't know what to say about this. You can't, you know. Because I suppose in many ways it's the ultimate validation that the staff, because it was totally different, it wasn't executives. So for me, I kind of, you know, that meant quite a bit to me in terms of that. Yeah. I guess the other highlight was dressing up as Pudsey Bear in Jersey for children in need, and actually walking around Jersey in the proper Pudsey outfit. And we collected £5,000. That's still remembered with some fondness in Jersey. But daft things like that, those are kind of... And I guess people... And when you were just talking about
being voted, because one of the things in that video with Simon Sinek was about all you've got to do is ask the team. The team knows who the most trusted person is, who the most reliable person is, and there you had a vote. So that was brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah, so I mean, it's things like that. It might seem to whoever's listening to this quite trite, but actually, you asked me personally was about those are the personal things. Yeah, I love teams doing very well. You know, I was celebrated at Jersey when they were Corporate Social Responsibility Employer of the Year. You know, this is a bloody regulator, for Christ's sake. You know, we're supposed to be great people, but that was a kind of a celebration, and the delight of people in terms of that, because people do. It's a thank you thing as well at the end of the day, isn't it?
So what's your vision then, or your wish for the future? You've just mentioned, I don't want to divert you, you can talk about anything, but corporate social responsibility you mentioned, and I was thinking of sustainable companies, sustainable business, and how the guy at Unilever, Holman, was it? I mean, he left, and the guy at Danone has just left. So at first I thought there was a trend for more people over profit, but it seems to have stalled. But that's just me.
Because I think people have got very, very lofty aims. My idea of corporate sport, the reason Jersey won it is I gave everybody 15 hours a year to do corporate social responsibility. I gave them 15 hours. I said, you can do things that, you know, provided you're not off doing stupid things. And people came together. We signed up with Mencap. They had an area that needed help. So people cutting down trees and doing stuff. But the build-up in teamwork, I mean, some people had worked in the same building for 5 years and never spoken to anybody, you know, about from the top floor. So it's great if you've got a leader doing it, but actually it's gathering in people, you know, gathering the staff. That would be something I would kind of see as something I'd be happy to be associated with, because it brought people out. I mean, I remember at Legal Aid, one of the guys there, you know, they said that he wasn't well organised. So I sat and talked to him. He ran the bloody Scout Jamboree for the whole of Great Britain. He said he couldn't organise anything. So I remember saying to his manager, because he one of the regional officers, I said, he's a character, isn't he? He said, well, he's very, you know, we're not sure he's good organising. I said, have you ever asked him what he does outside of work? Well, it's something to do with the Scouts. I said, something to do with the Scouts. He organised the Jamboree for the whole... They're going to Japan, I think. I must have a memory like something else. But he was taking like 700 Scouts to Japan. I said, I think you should go and have a chat with him. Anyway, sure enough, within 12, 18 months, he was a great supervisor. Well, it's things like that. And I know I'm smiling about it, but it's memorable stuff, you know, just by asking.
And there... That could take us into all kinds of things, because I've seen some people thrive under one manager and be absolutely terrible under another. It's just how
well, yeah, but you know, when I first walked into organisations, and I'm sure it's the same for you, people are very happy to say, I've got 20 years experience. And I used to say to them, have you got 1 year's experience you've used for the last 20 years? And they kind of look at you, because they've survived on something they did well 20 years ago. And that may seem an exaggeration, but it's not too much of an exaggeration.
Well, I've heard you say that before as well. I remember that one.
And it's always a good opener So, tell us about your current experiences, like what you're most happy about in the last 12 months, 6 months, if you want. And, some of them toil with that. But, yeah, so experience is a very interesting measure, shall we say.
Absolutely. So I want to thank you for coming and sharing your experience with us. It's certainly been a pleasure for me, and I'm sure that you've been talking about all kinds of issues that are still as relevant today as they were when we were going through them.
Yeah, that's the thing. It might seem to it, but the same issues are still knocking about. It's about people. It's about being authentic, and as our favourite person says, it's about caring for people. And if you can, make all those things, do all those things well, then you've got a good chance of being an effective leader, a really effective leader, in my humble opinion.
In your humble opinion, there's nothing much humble about you.
Well, is this an interview that you were expecting, or you didn't really know, did you?
Well, I knew roughly, because you and I have had various conversations. So I did know the things that you were passionate about, and I knew that there would be things that people would be interested in listening to. So yeah, thank you. You didn't disappoint, Mike, at all. Thank you so much for coming.
And have a lovely weekend. It's Friday. The sun is shining. I think it's Friday. Well, I'm not sure, because with lockdown, they just blend into each other. Weekends don't have weekends anymore. They're just another day. And
this podcast goes out on a Monday, so thanks for that.
Well, this Monday.
Next Monday, yeah.
Oh, it's going on Monday. Well, don't forget to send me, if you think it's any good, send me a copy. If not, don't bother.
Of course. Yeah, definitely. So thanks for coming on the
Thank you for the opportunity. It's been great to talk to you, great to catch up with you. And as I said in your notes, you were a pleasure to work with. I'll pass the compliments back. And you've obviously, got a passion for stuff very similar to mine. So more power to your elbow or whatever else you're using to make a difference.
That's lovely. Thanks very much, Mike.
Okay. Speak to you again soon.
See you soon.
Thank
Bye.
You. Bye.
Bye.